Like, wait a minute, are they just making it sound lower and lower to like increase this bleakness? You know?
Exactly. And the fact that it's like a centrally controlled, mostly centrally controlled unified system is an issue.
They have like 3 different ones to give you this like idea that
it's a little like political parties that
right.
Gives you the illusion of choice. It's less about actual reputation and your community and the people that you live around, and it just becomes a number.
Welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. Eric was just telling me about his Dick Tracy watch. So if you want to see his Dick Tracy watch in action as he's vaping through this episode, then you'll want to hit like and share and subscribe.
Is Dick Tracy some kind of innuendo thing? Hey.
Oh, I see what they did there with that name.
Would you like to see my Dick Tracy, huh? Yeah, so for those in like watch world, I finally picked up my dream watch, the Casio G-Shock GPRB 1000. Pretty awesome kit. But anyway, so yeah, I am Eric Rosenblatt. Casey and I write around music. If you stick around to the end of the episode, you'll hear hopefully a new song. I don't think we've quite run out of new songs, but you can get those songs, said song, out there. iTunes,
songy places.
yeah, musicy kind of websites where
we're actually on a bunch of them. So like,
yeah. iTunes, Spotify, whatever. There's I think you can do it through Patreon. You can go to our website if you just want a central place to find all the stuff, because we do have merch too, a little bit. It's ksmvidcast.com, so go check that out. So well, Casey, what should we talk about today other than tracing dicks?
Yeah, see?
Bigger rat, see?
Well, I was thinking, now I'm thinking I need some kind of Dick Tracy nickname based off my bald head, but before
that,
I
bullet.
Yeah, that's traffic control. Before we go into Red Dwarf or anything, I've been thinking a lot lately about things like credit scores and even this idea of like quantifying reputation. It seems like there's some skeevy ways that could go with categorizing people in that manner, and I thought it would be interesting to talk about like the ins and outs of reputation, whether or not it's even a good thing to like really even tread upon. Like,
that's a
because here's the thing. I always say, like, this is the hardest hypocrisy anybody has to get over. They think if somebody does something bad once, they're always a bad person. Everything else they do is bad. But if you do one good deed, like it doesn't go the other way. Like that's
what's the saying about reputation? It takes like a lifetime to build a reputation and only minutes to destroy it.
Yeah, that's wrong. That feels so wrong. Like you're not only categorizing people, you're setting them up for failure.
Well, and also, like, I think maybe it might create undue strain and stress on people that they're constantly walking on eggshells because, oh, you say the wrong thing on Twitter and you're canceled and you lose your job and you lose your house and your wife divorces you or something, and your balls are raked across the coals and stuff, all because of like a thought you had, which is crazy. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely don't like that whole stacked against you feel that there is with credit. Like you said, like there's tests and stuff where the curve kind of makes sense, but in this fashion, I don't know if that even makes sense.
Well, I think we could talk. I'd like to talk about a couple different things in this episode. There's the reputation thing. We could probably start with credit because that is kind of the easiest thing to maybe discuss about. But there's also, in China, they're instituting the social credit system, which is really crazy. This is like Black Mirror.
Black Mirror. Yep.
Yeah. Like, you essentially, you've got a score on yourself.
Oh my God.
And I mean, that's terrifying for a lot of reasons, which I'd like to get into, but why don't we just start with credit? Because I think it all kind of ties together, a little web of craziness.
That is the one that, well, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, a lot of the things that like even social credit, financial credit, I get where the source is and I get why they're trying to do it. This kind of reputation system, because it's like, well, you're not just going to lend something to somebody that you don't trust. So you're building a system of trust, but it can be very easily abused. And I think the way things currently are, it's not about trust. It's about control.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Because how do you measure trust in a complete stranger and like quantify things from that? It feels. I think I lost the thought.
And it can be problematic. I guess. I mean, you could certainly. There are definitely benefits to kind of reputation systems, right? Like Better Business Bureau and stuff, because enough people complain or they give positive reviews, and you can kind of get like reviews of a restaurant. Or something.
If you remember, they're kind of a Ponzi scheme thing or something.
Well, that's true, and I think that's an issue when something becomes too big, that it kind of wants to control things. We saw that with Yelp, right? Like Yelp reviews and stuff. Back in the day, Yelp was the place to go. Like, yeah, you could trust Yelp because it was fairly honest. Like the scores were accurate. The reviews were based on popularity and stuff like that. So, you could go and look at like a restaurant on Yelp and get a pretty accurate sense of how good or bad of a restaurant it was or what the experience could be like. But come to find out, Yelp is basically extorting a lot of businesses. So they're saying, hey, and I know people personally who run businesses who have dealt with this, where Yelp contacts them and says, well, there's a lot of negative reviews out there. And, if you pay us, we'll put the positive reviews at the top and kind of tweak things. But if you don't pay us, well, all the negatives are going to the top. So it kind of.
Does Elon Musk own them?
But, well, it's just something that happens when a system gets so complex and becomes so self-absorbed that it becomes more about its own internal operation than actually performing the service that it was originally built around. Like Facebook is a good example of that. Facebook now is not about connecting people. It's about dividing people and collecting all their personal information and selling them shit. That's pretty much what it's about. But I think we should. I want to start with credit, like financial credit. So credit card companies, credit lines from banks, and all that stuff. Credit scores, things like that. Because the problem I have with the credit score system, well, for one, the numbering is kind of dumb. Like, why doesn't it just go from 0 to 100?
Right. Because they want room to like push that down over time. I have
you're less than 0, bitch. I think that room for expansion, I guess.
Yeah.
But why is like a really like the lowest credit score, what is it, 400 or something like that? That's
the thing. It changes. Like I've seen anywhere from like 500 to low 300s or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, are they just making it sound lower and lower to like increase this bleakness?
Probably. Yeah. Or maybe, to distance the people who have good credit even further. So, I'm even better now because now I'm like, 700 points above that person.
I think that's happened too. Like, I remember having pretty good credit and it was like 650 or something. Mm. And that was like in that, green range. You've got pretty good credit. And then over time that was like, and it's like, well, you're not at 750 credits. So you're not quite like fair.
Sure. Well, and I guess that's the thing. It's like the numbers at that point don't even matter because it's a matter of where the the
goalpost right now.
Yeah, like, where the goalposts are, like the red line and the green line, like, and I think it's been narrowing over time quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. And that's relatively new from like the 80s. Like we didn't used to do that. We didn't need to do that because the power of word of mouth is like one bad review. One person that speaks up enough to say something about your one mistake, which all humans are granted, right? Sure. All it takes is for other people to read that and they go around telling other people, well, I heard that somebody had this experience and it was bad. And that must be indicative of all the experiences you could ever have walking in there.
Yeah.
And then people just spread that shit.
Well, not only that, but you've got the telephone booth issue too, where people add things and they distort the story over time. At first it's like, well, the original review was, I went in there and somebody said, well, you don't have any money. Well, just go fuck off. And that was what originally happened. But by the time it changes hands so many times, all of a sudden people start telling stories like, oh yeah, the owner of the business pulled out your dirty Harry fucking 44 Magnum and blew the guy away. Like that is what actually happens. And that's why I think it's really, there are benefits to a reputation system, but we have to be very careful to kind of analyze things. The story sounds outlandish.
We always had something though. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. It's not like banks were just like, oh, sure, I don't know you from Adam, but here, have some money. They actually wanted you to like have letters of reference and stuff. And really that's actually better than anything we have now.
True.
Because those are like actual like random people that have actually interacted with you, giving their informed opinion of your trustworthiness.
Yeah.
Now what do we have is what like the rich fucking fat cats decide is trustworthy.
Well, exactly. And the fact that it's like a centrally controlled, mostly centrally controlled unified system is an issue. Like it all works the same. Back in the day, banks
but they have like 3 different ones to give you this like idea that
it's a little like political parties that gives you the illusion of choice.
But every merchant ever that runs your credit,
well, and they look at all
picks the lowest number.
Yeah, exactly.
Guaranteed.
Oh man,
it's such a racket.
Oh yeah. Well, it being centrally controlled is, I think, an issue. In that it's impersonal. Like,
who does control that?
I don't know.
Is there like a bureau of reputation? Because that sounds scary as shit.
I think it's like panels of banking executives that kind of like get together and meet up and decide things.
Stealing an apple of the people.
Yeah, kind of. Oh man, I had a point that I was going to make that I've since. Now you brought up Red Dwarf, and I'm like replaying that episode in my head, and I've lost it now. As far as credit, what was I going to say about that? Shit, I actually had a really good point.
Something about banks.
I think banks were part of it, but I'll just put it into long-term memory retrieval, and it'll come back to me eventually. I think it had to do with the impersonal nature, though, of things. That it just, I mean, I guess that is kind of a point that it's less about actual reputation and your community and the people that you live around, and it just becomes a number, like an arbitrary number at that too.
Well, and they're picking this criteria that doesn't make any sense. It's like, oh, if you ask for credit many times, you can't manage money. But that's basically detracting you from weighing your options.
Which actually, that was a point I was going to bring up, that inquiring about your credit score dings your credit score.
Yeah.
That's and what you said is poignant. Like, it's kind of like saying, if you have a habit of checking to make sure your front door is locked, well, then you must not be a security interested person. Right. Like, you must be a risk. Like, you're probably going to leave the door unlocked and people are going to walk right in. Like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That is absolutely the opposite of what that means. Like, if you change your password or use 2-factor or lock your computer, oh, you must be a like IT security risk or something. No, but the asshole that like has had the same password since the 90s, oh, they're totally okay. They've never asked about their credit. You never inquire, so you're not a risk at all. Like,
here's how effective reputation-based things are. In order to become a police officer, they look so deep into your past. They look your background up one side and down the other. Mm-hmm. And yet, where do you find a bunch of these violent, like, mongrels full of hatred getting employment?
Well,
you can get past it.
Ask the question, like, well, how effective is this litmus test they have?
Exactly.
Well, I remember my just as kind of an aside, a little bit of a humorous thing to lighten the mood. My brother had entertained the idea of working for a police department and went through a bunch of paperwork and all this stuff. So this is creepy enough. But they basically said, well, you have to give us your Facebook password so we can like see all your shit before you can be hired. And my brother's like, well, I don't actually have Facebook. I don't use Facebook. And they looked at him like he was crazy. And they like didn't believe him. And it's like, okay, how many people are on planet Earth? And how many users are there on Facebook that are not bots? There's a lot of people that don't use that service. It's not that outlandish for somebody not to have a Facebook account. You know, it's like somebody saying, well, give me access to your LinkedIn. And it's like, I don't fucking have a LinkedIn. Why would I need that? You know, but it was kind of skeevy, honestly, that they demand the actual password to your Facebook account.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, so
I never got that far. I was looking into it enough to like fill out the application and like have to get entire like backgrounds on my friends and stuff. Like,
wow.
Like some of my best friends, it was asking questions that I didn't know. And I like had to contact them and be like, hey, so I'm thinking of being a cop, but like, I need to ask you like this really bizarre personal question.
Like, you know, okay, so the question, I know it's going to sound weird, but have you ever seen the video where the guy puts the jar in his ass and it breaks? That's the question they're asking me. It surprised me. Like,
I mean, that's how deep they go.
Yeah.
I mean, not that video. I'm talking about like the search into your
yeah, exactly. Like some of the craziest things. And it does kind of like, and it makes you wonder, like, okay, if they're digging that deep into people, and still there are still assholes being hired.
Mm-hmm.
Was that even really necessary? Does that actually have an effect?
And this is the one vantage point against gun control that I have, is like the whole concept of like leaning so heavy on background checks. Like, it's not that it's a bad thing, but to expect that having more of those is somehow going to catch somebody who has a bad temperament, but maybe nobody noticed or he never got caught doing something wrong. They still slip through the cracks, you know, like,
yeah, that's true.
You know, so it's not like I'm saying, oh, don't do background checks for guns, but like, don't expect that to actually fix it. Like, there's going to be other layers, you know?
Well,
so like that's
really
the thing, is the nuance. Like, there's no nuance in reputation.
Well, and it kind of like takes I guess the system itself is kind of absolved of any kind of obligation to really do anything, when they just simply rely on data chosen arbitrarily by people that don't really know anything too. Yeah, I mean, like you're saying about the gun control thing, like background checks. So, okay, background checks as far as like firearms laws are kind of like the singular thing that has actually made a difference. But then it does kind of raise the question, like, well, what are the things you're looking for and how far does it go? And again, it's very arbitrary. Like, you could say, well, this is a warning sign, or that's not a warning sign, but maybe it's the opposite, you know? Like, it's just fallible people deciding on the criteria that they judge things on. And that is not the right way we should be doing things. We should be doing things scientifically, like evidence-based processes. And when it comes to credit, it's very, very similar. It's just made up. Like, the whole entire system is made up. Oh, and don't even get me started on applying for credit in the first place. Okay. You know, as a newbie going into the scene, like, well, okay, if you want to go to college, the government steps in and they're like, oh yeah, we'll extend you basically like a fucking mortgage for a house so you can go to school. sight unseen, you need no reputation whatsoever, and then you get stuck with like a massive student loan bill, which is very problematic because it should be based on some understanding of your understanding of things, that you're not going to be like completely ridiculous, like.
So you're kind of saying like, just because you might be new to something doesn't mean you aren't already equipped with skills for it. Mm-hmm. So like you can't really say every new person is going to be shitty with their money, because I know people that are way younger than me that have their shit way more together than I do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you can't, by the same token, like say that somebody that plays the numbers correctly is a responsible adult that right. is responsible with money and is worthy of having credit extended to them. Like it's more complex than that. But to even get credit as a beginner, like this is one of the things that I thought about when I was first kind of starting out, because I was thinking, well, okay, how do you get credit? Well, you get credit by getting credit. Like it's like I guess akin to like a catch-22 sort of thing. It's like, oh, well, how do you build a credit score? Well, you use credit. Okay, but where does that start? Like at what point does that start? Like they won't give you a line of credit unless you already have a credit score, like already have experience with it. Which is kind of like saying, well, we won't teach you how to swim unless you already have swimming experience. Like, wait a minute.
Well, then you get these like other forms of reputation where they like quantify your risk and then like jack up in interest rates on the introductory credit stuff. Mm-hmm. And they basically throw you into that bucket of like, you're shitty with money, so automatically this will be more expensive for you. And then that kind of prevents people from actually like jumping into the whole credit pool, which is maybe a good thing.
I would be inclined to agree. Credit should be used sparingly. Like it is a useful tool, but just like payday loans, just steer clear wherever possible. It's a black hole financially. But it is kind of interesting that the credit system as it stands today views people who have never actually had the chance to demonstrate financial responsibility. It views them as the same as people who have lived, like been in the credit world for 40 years and have been totally irresponsible. Like, okay, there is definitely a difference. If you have never actually dipped your toes into the water, well, you can't judge. So you can't be like, well, you don't know how to swim. But if you've been like trying to swim for 40 years and you are constantly, the lifeguard's constantly rescuing you, well, okay, well, that's demonstrably not, you're not a swimmer. Like you're a bad swimmer. So to say that the person who's never even tried to swim is the same as the person who's been, jumping in the water for 4 decades and is like constantly sinking, like that's ridiculous. Which is why credit scores are stupid. Like, mm-hmm. Yep. It'd be better to have some kind of a tiered system, maybe something that allows introductory things like, okay, if you don't have a credit score, well, as long as you have a job, like some source of income, we'll give you like $100, like a credit line of $100, a little credit card, you can buy some stuff and you can just build off of that. But they don't do that. Like the only way I could actually initiate myself into the world of credit is to go to a really shady car dealership and purchase a used car with a loan, which I came home with the car and my dad was like, oh, wow, that's cool. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I got a loan and stuff. He's like, oh, let me see. And he looked at the paper. He's like, what? 28%? Like, oh my God, that's highway robbery. And I'm like, well, that's all I could get. Like that's it. Like nobody else would give me credit. Like there's where I begin. Like, okay, maybe we can start people off small. And in fact, maybe that's a good idea that you begin with a very small amount, a manageable amount of money, rather than,
a lunch money card in school. You get an allotment for the year.
Yeah. Make it a class too, even. Like incorporate it into the curriculum so that people can learn how to manage money and manage credit and not go hog wild when, they say, oh, I have like $5,000 credit line. And they just rack it up, like not realizing, well, you're going to have to pay the piper eventually for that bullshit thing that you bought, or pile of things. It seems nice in the here and now, but delayed gratification, that is a skill they don't teach in school.
Remember layaways?
Yeah, that's actually
before credit was like really like pervasive. Layaways were totally a thing. Go to Kmart, put this on layaway.
Yeah,
like they right up the bat in the commercial, they're telling you it's expensive, so come give us money every few months and you finally get to take it home.
Yeah, it's kind of like throwing money into a savings account until you have enough. And actually, the very first gun that I bought on layaway. Mm-hmm. I even had dreams about it when I was nearing like the final payment.
I would get my leather jackets like that.
Yeah, like we need to bring that back. That's actually kind of a good way because there's really nothing at stake.
Nobody loses anything if they don't follow through.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. But to be able to just kind of on a whim, just buy something super expensive. Credit can be used to spread things out. But it should be used for, like, generally speaking, I use my credit card for car repairs that are repairs I can't do or don't want to do. Like, it's fucking 20 degrees out and, there's some car issue. I'm like, yeah, I'll just pay for it over there. Or for like that odd, super expensive utility bill that hits me like right before Christmas. Like, okay, I'm going to throw that on the credit card so I don't have to deal with that because, yeah, it's fucking Christmas, right? But that's what it should be used for. I don't know. But credit scores, I think everybody except for the elites at the top can agree that credit scores and that entire reputation system is completely bogus. Well, and honestly, if you're a bottom line kind of person, it's also bogus. Like it's kind of a shitty, overly simplistic, very naive way to kind of look at things. Like you could have way more customers, way more profit if you were smarter about the way you analyze things and people and their ability to pay things and their understanding of money and their responsibility. Like there's a lot of profit to be had in not being a dick.
If only more people would see that.
Yeah, well, when you live atop the ivory tower, it's kind of hard to see without binoculars.
Yeah, and it is a total cash grab, like interest and it's always monetary, right? Like it comes back to somebody making money off of your reputation. It's like, well, if you've got a poor reputation with money, we must charge you more and put it in our pockets. Like where's this protection money going, right? Like
that's actually, you make an interesting point that I think a lot of our viewers are going to appreciate, that the lower your income, the greater a percentage you have to pay.
Yeah.
And when you're up there in the six figures or beyond, and you probably don't pay that much of a percentage to the system, to the banks, to credit companies that
where this came from, right? Like the opposite of having people pay what they can on a sliding scale all the way up and down for everything is to create a system of reputation and then push people down.
Yeah.
Well, so many people are like brainwashed into being resistant to this idea of spreading out a little bit with wealth, like being a little bit generous and helping people, not just collecting it all, but like using it to help others. They take that and they make that the enemy by building this reputation system. It's like, oh, well, I earned my good credit, but I don't want to share things with other people who didn't earn it and get this score that I did. It builds walls between people.
That is true. And I think that's kind of a thing that needs to be considered is if you have stuff, some resources, sharing is really important. Take care of the people around you. I do my part charitably, either voluntarily or forced through taxes, voluntarily through nonprofit organizations and stuff. But I think that should be more encouraged. Help people out. It doesn't always have to be money too. Sometimes it's just like a kind word or something like that. But well, when everything turns into a system of numbers, well, that's how we see people, essentially.
Yeah, it's always gets meta, but yeah, it's kind of built into who we are now, isn't it? Unfortunately, something completely made up, some phenomenon.
Well, and it's people. Well, we do YouTube. We pay attention to the metrics, like how many views we get, how many likes we get, that kind of thing, and that becomes sort of the basis for comparison. Or we feel accomplished if we have a certain number of views, but
right.
I don't know that. Yeah, that doesn't really mean anything. And I don't think reputation. Now, okay,
right. If one person watches our show a week or something, well, that's not very many. But if one of our episodes that one person was watching prevented them from committing suicide, well, I'd take that over 10 million views any day.
Exactly. Yeah. For one person to say you've changed my life, that's important. That is actually what I'm all about on this planet, is changing lives. I want to leave it better than when I came. And so, yeah, I think analyzing things in a strictly numerical sense is harmful. It can be useful just because there's a lot of data and it can be confusing. So sure. Okay, at times you want to just reduce things to numbers or geometry and simplify it so you can look at it better. But I think when it comes to reputation systems, we need to think a bit more creatively. And that's what you're saying earlier. I worry that something like a social credit score would turn into something like a financial credit score, which is based purely around arbitrary numerical systems and measurements and extents of things like what's good, what's bad is going to be decided by like a select few, and it's going to be basically the populace is going to look at that and they're going to be like, well, that person's bad because they have like, you know, a score of like 300 or something. Their social credit score is 300 because that one time at band camp, you know,
there's a great episode of Black Mirror that goes into that. And that was the one episode I was watching and I was like, this feels so real. Like there's a lot of Black Mirror episodes like that, but that one I was like, I feel like this is already here. Like,
in a way it kind of is. Like social media has kind of done that, but imagine if that, you know, jumped out of the online world and became part of the real world, like the physical world, not just where your social credit score isn't just like, oh, you have a number on a website. No, this determines whether you can get a job. It determines whether friends like you or not. It determines whether you can even go to a store and buy food, or whether you're going to be executed by the state. Like that could happen with a system like that.
So we'd have the pressure of like a coin-based economy to stress us out, but we'd also have this like life-based economy.
Yeah. Yeah,
that really scares the shit out of me.
Oh yeah, exactly, because there really is no end to it. Like I said, it's possible you could be tortured or killed because of just a public opinion, like basically enough people saying, oh, I don't like that person, downvoting you, like thumbs down, and now all of a sudden you're dead. Yeah. So I mean, like I said earlier on, I get where people are going. Like the concept they're working from does make sense.
Between people that you might interact with, like one-on-one.
Sure.
You know, like, or if there's some reasonable sense that you could like figure out their character, you know, maybe even just spend 15 minutes, like have lunch with them or something and be like, okay, you know, I'll give you some credit. Like, but we just have this fucking number system that somebody selected and controls.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of shitty. And now, granted, it makes sense because the system is tied to the system that you're appealing for the resources that you're wanting. So you're kind of beholden to that. But the fact that it's centrally controlled does cause issues. And that is really what I worry about, like the China style social credit system. You know, you say the wrong thing about Winnie the Pooh. Oh, sorry. Oh, whoops. I just said it. Xi Jinping. Like, and all of a sudden that gives you like a huge, like you go into the red at that point. Like now all of a sudden everybody hates you. You're likely to be arrested for the smallest thing. Maybe just they might just come into your house in the middle of the night. You know, you go into a store and you try to buy something and they're like, hey, what's your social credit score? I mean, you know, it could be something like you actually have it displayed on your body too.
It seriously sounds like an Aldous Huxley novel.
Yeah. It is very, very Huxlerian. It's dangerous territory. Like now, when it's a distributed system, something that's community built, I think that can be good.
I was gonna bring that up actually, like consumer reports and stuff. Like I always thought like, nah, I don't know if I really buy like the negative stuff that much because, you know, like I said earlier, all it takes is like one person to like, you know, tell this story that they had that was one bad experience and other people will just, you know, use that as an example. And I've been guilty of this, right? Like one of my favorite stories to tell is of a Yelp review I read of this place that a girlfriend of mine had gotten food sickness from. I went and looked at the reviews, and there was a guy that said, I've gotten food poisoning there 3 times. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe I could see that giving them one more chance, but 2? Like, and that stuck with me.
That's actually a really well, and this is where like we have to be vigilant, I guess, and critical of those systems, and look at the reviews, and maybe the reviews should have reviews too. Like, if you leave a comment, like a review of a product, right, and it's so outlandish and clearly wrong, either direction, whether it be in support or as a detractor of the product, well, then enough people can like stack on, they could push it up or down.
And we have that. And that's the one good thing about social media, is that like you can have reviews there that people are like, it's a living document sort of review. Like people can respond to it. People can jump in and be like, well, what about this or that? And actually like have a little conversation, a little kitchen sink microscopy, if you will.
Exactly. But then you go to some things and it's like comments are turned off.
Yeah.
That's a common thing on YouTube, sadly. But that you're right. Like that, the engagement, the discussion is what it's all about. Because if it's like obfuscated, if it's completely opaque, well, then the only information that the person like viewing a thing is going to have is what's displayed. There won't be an opportunity to see what other people have had to say, counter arguments or things like that, citations of information, people asking questions like, well, wait a minute, that kind of thing. That's important. That is the thing that stabilizes things. It's not going to be perfect, but it is a lot better than being in the dark about things and having a centrally controlled system where like you really don't have a say in it. Like the credit system, you don't have a say in that. I mean, I guess you do, in that you could just simply choose not to participate, but there aren't a lot of options apart from, if you do want credit, you still are dealing with those big 3 credit companies.
If I had a choice between the consumer report style and the credit score style, I would certainly go for the former. I'm just saying it's not like super perfect, but
no, and I don't think any system's going to be perfect, but the goal should be aiming to make it perfect. Yes, we're always going to fall short of that mark, but as long as we're like looking in that direction and that's our goal, we'll get closer to it than we will when we don't make that the goal. I like a good example of really good reputation systems, and I actually think blockchain and crypto can potentially solve this too. But that's a conversation for another day. But an example of a reputation system that actually works really well is eBay. Like you as a seller and as a buyer have a rating. So if you're a asshole buyer, well, the seller can like feed you some shit. If you're an asshole seller, the buyer can feed you some shit. Like, and maybe your little voice for sellers that have sold like 100,000 items, it may not mean anything in the moment, but if the seller really is legit an asshole with 100,000 sales, well, they're sure to have a lot more voices than just yours calling them out on their tomfoolery. So, it kind of keeps people in check at both sides, because, as a buyer, that buyers should be reviewed just like sellers. And it's kind of a credit system, but eBay, they don't ask any questions. You're kind of like,
yeah, almost everybody is like, well, I don't know if I've ever seen anybody that wasn't in the upper 90%, really.
Yeah, exactly. So if you see somebody who has like tens of thousands of sales and they're like 89% positive, you're going to be like, maybe I don't want to buy from that person. But what's nice about eBay, when you're looking for an item, it's not like Amazon. It doesn't lump it into one listing and then you kind of have to click on things to figure things out. No, you just see like pages and pages of people selling you things. You can sort it by like how close it is to you. There's all kinds of different options. You can sort by price. It's a great system, and it kind of, yes, there's a corporate hive mind behind it, but it is ultimately community built, because it's the interactions between people and their feedback that builds that. Like, somebody didn't just be like, oh, here's the line. Ooh. You just, like you said, as a buyer, you've never seen people like below the 90s percentile. So if you see that, it's kind of like, ooh, wait a minute.
I wonder though, here's a good question, a thought experiment. Is that a market created floor that's like that high above zero? Or is that corporate intervention weeding those people out to make it look like the market created that floor? And you should be looking down on all the other people in the 70% and 60%. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's possible, but then what's nice about the eBay system, one bad review out of tens of thousands isn't going to ding you. So that one oddball person that like, or something got broken in shipping, which it's the shipper, and well, could be the packager, could be the shipper, you never know. Could also be the customer who's just like, well, discontent anyway. But it won't ding you. So in order to have those low numbers, you either have to have very few sales and you've got to be very clumsy, or you have to have a lot of sales and be a complete dick.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like it does kind of tilt. It's got bias because like it dings you a bunch if like you sell 2 things a year.
Yeah.
Like that's your livelihood. They happen to be $100,000 each, and you can just sell 1 or 2 a year and you're fine. But like one dude gets pissed off and all of a sudden you've got like a 50% rating.
And there should be,
it's transactional based instead of like qualitative, like
you're right.
One-on-one. Yeah.
And there should be wiggle room, like to kind of compensate for that. Mm-hmm. And in a way there is, again, it's not perfect, but
then they add in some kind of like a kind of a sticker that says, hey, my score might be 10, but I'm really good at paying, or whatever,
yeah,
like, well, achievement stickers.
Exactly. Like, but I honestly, in the world, I would rather deal with an eBay style system,
yeah,
above like the credit score system. Like, at least eBay is interactively constructed by the community. I don't want to like equate it to the metaverse, but it kind of does go in that direction. Whereas like, Experian and all these other fucking companies out there, like, they just kind of like dictate and everybody just kind of bows to it because, well, you want credit, right? And for whatever reason, this is something I've got to dig into. Like, why are those the companies that are dealt with? Why are they the only companies?
Let's start our own credit score company, the Kitchen Sink Microscopy Credit Bureau.
We could also start our own bank. and our own loan system. However, given that we live in the US, we're beholden to the US's system, which kind of requires us to be dicks. So we'll move to Panama, our own banking and credit line system. Yeah.
Yeah, like all you got to do to get credit is be a guest on the show, and we'll chat and get to know you and have a good conversation and be like, yeah, that dude deserves credit. Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah.
Well, and that actually having a like face-to-face conversation with somebody and reading a person's personality is actually a lot more valuable than just looking at like their bank statements and their history on Facebook or something.
And
like,
that's what they point to now to say like why credit scores are a good thing. They're like, it used to be we would just meet with you and talk to you and decide if we wanted to give you money or not. And everybody got screwed over doing it that
way. Well, it's true. Yeah. Like,
I mean, that's how they present it, which like doesn't really make sense, I think.
I agree. Yeah.
Like not everybody's that bad of a judge of character. Like, come on.
Well, and I don't think that the system that has been built, the credit score system, is capable of properly analyzing who's a good client and who's a bad like a safe client or a risky client. Let's say not good and bad. I'm going to say safe and risky. 2008 showed us that. The subprime. Oh man. But yeah, there were definitely better ways. And I think as consumers, because the thing is like, you and I and the viewers out there, we ultimately do dictate like what these companies do. They can't point a gun at us and compel us to get a loan. We come to them. But when you just take the contract and you look at it and just sign it, well, you're not changing anything. Like, keep in mind, you can modify a contract. So if they hand you a contract, make the fucker who handed you the contract that's like 25 pages long, make them sit there and wait while you read every single line, and you call your lawyer and you ask questions, and then you make changes, cross things out, change things, and then hand it back to them.
Well, that's a facade. Like that you can technically do that, but you can't really, because they build in that clause like, if you modify this agreement whatsoever, we just won't do business with you. So it's like, if you need the thing done, you got to sign the contract.
Well, but you don't got to sign the contract because there's nobody forcing you to do it. No,
but they all have contracts. Like, you're not going to find a credit system that doesn't have a contract.
Yes, they do. Now, granted, most people, the lowly workers working at the desk or something aren't going to know what to do when you like cross out a clause and write your own in. But at the end of the day, they want your money. If more people do this, like, question things and just walk away, like, no, that's kind of sounds skeevy, I'm gonna walk away. Like, they're gonna have to change the way they do business, because they can't get our business unless we give it to them.
I tell you, the internet makes it hard because you really don't have that ability, with an electronic copy of a contract. You can't modify that. And like, I mean, I just today released a minute microscopy on this. It is like fees, like all these fees that start coming your way. And it's like, I don't know. I think I lost the direction I was going with that, but
well, I guess I'll say, if you're clever, you can modify an electronic copy of a thing. You don't have to buy Adobe Acrobat Pro.
Oh, I was trying to make my Harley pin.
Nice. Okay.
And it was like, there's a $3 fee. And I was like, oh, well, can I just pay with directly from the bank instead of a card? And, oh, still a $3 fee. Oh, all right. Well, I'll call and make a payment. They're like $3 fee. And it's like, can I mail this in? And they're like $3 paper fee. And it's like, you're just gonna take this extra $3, right? Like, you're trying real fucking hard for $3.
No matter what you do, no matter how many hoops you jump through, you're getting a dick inside you.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna happen one way or another. And that's how I feel about the government too. Like, every time I have to buy tabs for, oh my God. It's all a mess. I want this to be, this episode here that we're recording right now, to be the genesis of something great, like changing the system, like new paradigms, ways of doing things. Like, we should be thinking of this, and we should be building ideas, like building systems that actually work, that benefit people, that aren't stupid. They can also, like, here's the thing, everybody can win. Companies can profit, and customers can save money. Like, the two are not at odds with each other. It is totally possible for that to happen, but we have to work together. I don't know.
I mean, this actually ties in pretty well with a recent episode we did on like a smart money.
Yeah.
You know, like, imagine not only shifting the way we think about economy, but also the way we think about reputation, and how the two really affect each other quite a bit.
Oh, so,
like, for one to truly shift, the paradigm has to shift with the other as well. Interesting. Well, and we might be onto something here.
I think we might be. And I'm going to yet again bring up NFTs, which I think are actually quite brilliant. Most people, when they think of NFTs, if they think of them at all, they think of like the multicolored monkeys, or something, like people trading digital art or something. No, NFT. So what makes an NFT very powerful is it's a blockchain based program. You can create smart contracts. There's a lot of like really awesome potential in NFTs that is totally being ignored. Like, almost all the stuff that most people think like, oh, we need courts and government to manage, could easily be fixed by using NFTs.
It gets around reputation.
You can create systems like that. But I was thinking more about like the contract side of things. So you have like an escrow system too, which I think not Pirate Bay, Silk Road, I think, used. So does Open Bazaar too. Another thing, everybody should be going to Open Bazaar. Please buy the muffins. It's sort of like you can create like a go-between kind of system where it's like, okay, I'm going to buy this thing and I'll put the money into an escrow system, and it holds it until both sides agree that the transaction has been completed. So the recipient, like the seller, doesn't get paid until you receive the product. If something happens, there's ways of mitigating conflict resolution and stuff. Probably had too much beer to effectively explain it.
I was with you all the way up to simply.
Yeah. But it's a really brilliant system, and we could be using this daily, like all the time. But we're not. And then of course, state actors are constantly talking shit about crypto and blockchain. And well, they haven't really started talking about NFTs. Well, no, actually, some media has been talking about NFTs in a negative light.
Well, all it's been basically telling it as is, yeah, these little like pictures. And it says, oh, all these pictures do is just like be unique, and there's no other ones like them, and they're basically worthless after that. And it's like, oh, okay, these are weird.
But what NFTs do is provide a unique identifier that cannot be cloned or forged. Like, if you have this number, this string of characters, you are the possessor of this thing, and there's no way for somebody else to come in and be like, no, I'm the possessor, which is pretty useful. Don't even like the angle of you can like write code around it that everybody can see. It's like completely open source. Open source is actually very important for all encryption. In fact, more beer so I can like become less coherent about talking about very complex topics.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow, but man, it is. Oof. Well, that might be an episode in its own, so we can be a little more sober at the beginning.
Yes, we should definitely talk about that. It's just like technology can solve even the current technology we have can pretty much solve all the problems that we've built these behemoth systems, super expensive and complex and super inefficient systems behind to solve. Like, oh yeah, you could just totally solve that with an algorithm. You don't need a bureaucracy. You don't need like a $1 trillion organization to do that shit. Like, you could do that with some code.
We should like ask one of these supercomputers, like, what do we have to do to like, fix the environment? And they'll be like, oh, simply, like change the entire way you think about economy, change the entire way you think about reputation. And simply all you have to do then is, like take your ingenuity and fix the problem with the most efficiency, because it affects all of you and you will all want to chip into that effort.
Yeah. And I think AI is another solution for things. Speaking of the environment, I was watching a video recently, and apparently the way to solve climate change, okay, we're probably going to get some kind of flack for this, but it is to basically pour a bunch of dirty rust into the ocean. Like, that's all that's needed. And there was a team of people that did a study, and I feel like this is connected, because simple solutions challenge the system. But there was a team of people that did a study, and they tested this, and they had poured a bunch of like essentially what amounts to rust into the section of the ocean, and plankton grew, and like a whole bunch of carbon was absorbed out of the atmosphere. And they were like, yeah, that's basically all we need to do. And they got fucking swatted. Like, the Canadian like militarized police busted into their place, seized all of their shit, deleted all their data and got rid of everything.
Well,
and
okay.
It's like their whole point was like, well, this is actually a simple solution.
Okay, so just a devil's advocate to the sinister villain government swooping in. Could it be that they legitimately thought that that wouldn't work and it would just be a huge pollutant, kind of like a terrorist thing or whatever? Like, oh my God, they're just dumping a bunch of rust into the ocean. They're going to upset the ecosystem for several countries. We must stop them. Or do you think they actually were like, oh no, they're going to fix the earth? We must not let them.
I guess the former could be true if they never read any of the papers that they had produced. The thing is, there's a lot of money to be made on solving problems and, you know, fixing the environment and stuff. There's a lot of money. There are patents. There's trillions of dollars behind that. So if you challenge that with a solution that doesn't involve, like, I mean, it's basically just like, oh, you're just feeding plankton. That's all you got to do. Well, those systems that stand to gain from that, you know, from the hype and the fear, they're going to be terrified. And, well, you know, if they're government systems, they're going to have the tools to go and like mess you up, rough you up a little bit, which they did. I wish if I hadn't have had so much beer, I could have like mentioned this guy's name, who was kind of like heading this thing. But here's the thing. It's like, you know, it's so simple that it's worth entertaining. Like, if he's right, if this team is correct, and that's all it takes, well, why aren't we doing it? Like, if the goal is to fix a problem, let's go fix the problem. I don't care what it is. If it's like masturbating for 24 hours a day, like, you know, every single person on the earth does that, and that fixes climate change. Well, let's go do it. That's easy. Everybody does that. You know, like,
yeah, I mean,
it doesn't have to be complicated.
No, and I mean, that would be amazing if it were. And in fact, like, this is where I wish we had more of a reputation so that something like that would go viral, but there's like 4 people that watch us.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, it's kind of a bummer to not have the power that comes with reputation, I guess. But
yeah,
it's also sucks that it's there, you know, like,
I know, because, like, you know, being a small voice is a problem.
Like, if reputation were based off something, like if it were like, oh, here's the amount of people that like watched this for a long time, or, you know, like, liked this or whatever, you know, if it used that to say, like, you know, build an algorithm for your reputation rather than just counting how many people hit the like button or something.
Well, actually, no, you're right. Like
their engagement and their level of engagement.
Yes. Well, the people with like 10 million views, they do these like videos that, well, there are some that are pretty good. But just because you do a video of like the top 10 whatevers, that gets millions of people watching, doesn't mean that that's legit,
entertaining, or
just like or factual even. Like, it just means like you were very good at like getting engagement from people. It doesn't make you correct. Like, a popularity contest is a problem, and this is what's a problem I have with politics too, is that it is a popularity contest. It has nothing to do with like whether you actually have a history of doing the things you say you're going to do,
Didn't they touch on popularity as kind of a part of idiocracy too?
Yes.
You know, like the whole concept of it is kind of like dumbing.
Well, if you look at the U.S. president in Idiocracy, like that just kind of shows it all. Well, and I think that's born out of, I mean, things a long time ago, people cared about somebody in charge of a thing, like the captain controlling the helm of a ship, being a competent ship captain, right? Like that was a big deal, right? Hey, you should probably have been a sailor if you're going to sail a ship or command a ship. But now it's like, well, you know, you just have to like come out there like, hey, John Cena, you know, like fanfare and fucking explosions and shit. And all of a sudden you get voted in as president. Like now you're president, you know, like I think Donald Trump symbolizes that pretty well. Like you just got to be bombastic enough. And that's all it takes. You don't have to have a history of having done a thing. I mean, think about it this way. I guess a very simplistic analogy is imagine you're flying to New Jersey on a 747 from Seattle. That's close enough to SeaTac Airport. Yeah. So you're hopping on this plane, and the pilot has never actually flown before. Like they played Microsoft Flight Sim a bunch, but everybody agrees they're super nice. Like, oh, he's the nicest guy we've ever known. So they give him a pilot's license. You know, like he checks all the right boxes on the paperwork. You know, hasn't actually flown, but now you're on this plane flying across the country with a pilot who's never actually fucking flown before. Well, that's how the last shit, like 10 presidents have been, you know, like, and yet we think, oh, this is the solution. Like, oh, these people are important. We should care about this.
And we place trust in credentials to like catch that shit, because it's like, I mean, how often do you like sit there and examine the CV of your pilot and you know, make sure he's a pretty competent pilot? Well, you don't, you know, because you think, oh, okay, it's regulated. He needs a license, and that license is controlled or whatever. Like you realize that there's systems in place that are supposed to be taking care of that, and then when they don't, it's like, oh fuck.
Except those systems don't apply when you're a president. They do. Now the president is that's kind of the point I was trying to make, is like, that fucked up. The president is the commander in chief of, well, in the US. So they basically are at the helm of the US military. So
they should be military, maybe.
Well, at least have like some experience. Like it goes back to the whole, like, have you ever flown before? Oh, you won a popularity contest in high school. Okay, well, good enough. Wait, rubber stamp that shit. You're good.
Wasn't it at one point required that you had at least served in the military? Like, not necessarily be an officer or anything, but
possibly, yeah.
I thought at one point there was some requirement like that. I mean, they've moved the goalpost here and there.
Yeah, but I don't even know that military service is necessary. I honestly think like separating those things is kind of, we should be doing that.
I do agree.
Yeah. Like, this is, as usual, going deep,
because you don't want to fall into the identity fallacy either, where you think like, oh, just because you haven't done this means you have no opinion, or, you know, like it creates this elite club. Like, oh, well, you haven't done it, so you can't know it
Well, sure, and I agree with what you're saying from the standpoint of like general social interaction, but when it comes to like a big thing, like being a pilot,
Right.
or you know, I don't know, being the commander in chief of a fucking country, you know, maybe a little bit of experience is probably valuable. Like maybe we should care about that a bit.
Yeah. Really, the identity fallacy is more about the philosophical stuff rather than the like physical skill stuff. It's like, well, yeah, to be a pilot, you need training. Everyone would acknowledge that. But like to associate like, oh, only pilots know where north is or something. So it's like, don't tell me where north is. You're not a fucking pilot. You know, to do stuff like that is the fallacy.
Exactly. Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Pretty good to make that much sense with this much beer.
Oh
my god.
I'm kind of surprised that that we do actually. But yeah, and I don't even know that experience alone is enough. This is where reputation comes in. You know, where was Donald Trump's eBay rating or Joe Biden's eBay rating? You know, like, where is their score? Like, show me the money. Like,
right.
When have you actually done a thing? And it's less about experience and more about accomplishment. Like,
hey, and they're usually more busy telling you what bad shit the other guy did.
Mm-hmm.
All that mudslinging, and like from a young age, having been bullied, I recognized that, you know, that was what it was. You know, I was like, that's just somebody insecure trying to throw shit down on someone who's actually better at it than they are. So like, I've always kind of rooted for the underdog, I think, because of that, you know, like,
yeah, I totally understand that. And you're
that's
right.
valid
like,
too. You know, that goes against reputation.
Well, it is all about mudslinging.
Mm-hmm. Not unlike credit.
Well, yeah. Hey, we wrap it up in a bow, right? It is mudslinging, and it isn't something that is the focus of people's judgment of those people. We're more than willing to be like, oh yeah, go ahead and have your you know, we'll sign you up to have your finger on the nuclear button, and you know, decide to, I don't know, execute a family in their wedding with drone strike, or send 18-year-old kids to war. Yeah, that's fine, you know, because you sounded nice in the little competition that was the debates.
Shit getting heavy now.
Yeah, and it should be. And the debates never touch on that. It is like mudslinging. It's like a bunch of bullies yelling at each other, slinging insults at each other and stuff, and telling everybody that, oh, well, this person's awful. Get over for me because I'm better. And then the other person says the same thing. It's like, well, wait a minute. Who the fuck do I trust here?
And that's born out of our need or our dependence on reputation over experiential stuff. You know, like, oh, you know, like that person performed such and such job successfully for this many years. You know, they sound good for president, but then it's like somebody else is like, oh, that guy posed petting an elephant. I'm going to vote for him. And like,
I totally didn't expect that.
I mean, that's kind of what it is now.
It is. Okay. Idiocracy might be kind of a parody kind of movie, but things have kind of gone in that direction. And honestly, it is not that far of a leap between Idiocracy and 1984 or Brave New World. Like,
yeah,
two things are very similar. Just one is more comedic and the other is more dystopian. But they're honestly equally dystopian. Like Idiocracy, that world is a world I would not want to live in, honestly.
No.
But neither would I want to live in the world, 1984. But they're basically doing the same thing.
Yeah. One's just, polished for humor, and the other's a little more realistic.
Yeah, one is a little more serious, the other is a little more showmanship.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a trip to think about. Like, it's also, there's this kind of existential bleakness that I feel when I start thinking about things like this, is because it's like, it's so built in.
Yeah,
you'll never break it.
No, we won't. And honestly, the only way to get out of it is to, basically, it's, if you ever seen war games, the only way to win is not to play the game. It does require enough people to not play, to make that game go away. But the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. Like, you got to be the change you want to see in the world. Oh my God, I can't believe I just quoted like 2 cheesy ass poster quotes in one breath.
I was about to be like, the tallest blade of grass is the first to be mowed.
Yeah. I mean, but it is true. Like, oh man. Jeez.
A lot of beer, a lot of directions this way.
Well, that's true.
From reputation to dystopia.
I don't think those two things are too far off, honestly.
Nope.
And if you don't know how they're not too, or if you don't know how they are not too far off, well, you should be watching more kitchen sink microscopy.
Hell yeah. TikTok this shit, or whatever you kids do.
Exactly. Oh man,
TikTok's like short, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would need like 9,000 TikToks for one of our episodes.
Well, unless you're like a big TikToker, then you can have long form videos like we do.
Oh wow.
Streams and stuff. But then of course it's all vertical format. Which I don't know that I can necessarily do.
Yeah.
I see the problems in the world as like a global thing, and it's a humanitarian thing. And I think we should be having conversations like this. Conversational side of things is the most critical. Open source, being able to see the code, so to speak, and engage with it is vital. And banking and governments don't like that. They don't want you to see what's going on inside. They don't want you to have a say. Oh, yes, they'll pander to you and give you a vote so that you feel like you have a say. But just like that cartoon, one of my favorite cartoons with the cow.
All the ducks getting into trouble.
Yeah. Well, there was in this cartoon, I don't know, maybe if I'm editing this and I remember, I'm not too drunk by the time I'm to this point in editing, I'll throw this in there, but I'll describe it. In the cartoon, there's a cow standing facing 2 doorways. One says right, wait, yeah, right. One says left. And then, but you can see, you as the person looking at the cartoon can see the pathways. So the right and the left paths diverge and then cut into an area that is the slaughterhouse. So it doesn't matter the choice you choose. You know, you're gonna end up the way the system wants you to end up. And that's not right. Like, this is exactly why I'll pick a problem. We're here because of that system. So we got to try to fix it. We got to try to solve it ourselves. Like, expecting somebody else to, you know, somebody that's like more popular than another person, you know, the next Kardashian or something like that. They're popular. They're going to solve these problems. They know fuck all about anything. So I would rather everybody that knows a little bit about something, we all come together and try to solve a big problem. And there are a lot of big problems.
You know what? Like, I think I will actually run for governor in 2024.
Yeah,
because like that's what it's going to take, right? Is like actually injecting this kind of thinking into the system, like Janeway did to the Borg. Like, you're going to have to go in there and physically do the change, right? Like,
yeah,
you got to bring the ideas. So I think I should try to put together the funds. It wasn't that much. And then,
honestly, as somebody who doesn't vote, I would vote for you.
Yeah. Because then it might make a difference, right?
Yeah. Like, and if you win, hey, make me the vice governor, if that's okay. Because you could do that.
Yep.
And together, Wonder Twin.
Actually, I think that's an elected position.
Oh, okay.
Lieutenant governor.
Lieutenant. Yeah.
I think so, which is weird because the vice president is just like appointed by the guy running for president, right? Like,
yeah, it's kind of silly how arbitrary things are.
Yeah. It's like, shouldn't they kind of pick who their like backup man is? Like, because reputation, right? Like,
yeah. And honestly, these are questions people should be asking themselves. Like, why are things the way they are? Why are some positions elected and some are appointed?
Judges should not be appointed.
No, and term limits.
Yeah.
For everybody, you get one term and then you're out. That'd be fair.
Yeah. Keep stirring that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're gonna get clumps.
Yeah. Well, sadly, I hate to report this to you, Casey, but the United States is basically made of clumps at this point.
We're lumpy.
Well, some people like that. If it's your oatmeal.
I was just having an enlightening conversation with somebody in Germany who reached out to me to see how a local concert went. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And we just started having a conversation. And we earlier today, we were both saying, I was like, oh man, I like the shit I'm going through with healthcare and like my dad and stuff, like trying to get him help. It's a nightmare. And she was like, well, if you were German, that wouldn't be a problem, And I was like, yeah, I wish I could just go over there and just become a German. I wish it was that easy. And she was like, it's amazing how much of us like want to go to the US, but it's like, we also like look at it kind of like the world police and,
Yeah. Oh, I do love Team America World Police. It's one of my favorite movies, by the way. So good. Yeah. Um,
America, fuck
yeah. Oh man, it's such a good movie. If you haven't seen it, well, that's my movie recommendation for today. Might have to watch that tonight now. Now I get why some people want to come to the US. Now, a lot of it is based on this kind of myth, or maybe is it mythos, that the US is free. It's not. It is not a free place. Like, we're honestly here in the US, we're not any more free than the Chinese are in China. In fact, China is actually kind of more free in some ways.
I haven't looked at the Freedom Index in a while. That would be interesting to see. I don't know how often they update, but
yeah, like
I'd be interested to see like how far we've slipped down the rung.
Probably a ways. But the thing is, like, some people, it depends on what you want in life. There are people who want to be protected. They want services. There are some people who just want to be left alone. At one point in time, that was the US. It's not that way anymore.
Why can't you just opt out of the government though? Like if you want the services, you have to chip in and you feel fine doing that. Mm-hmm. And if you're of the opposite mind where you just want to be left alone, you don't give two shits about anybody else. Mm-hmm. Like, well, okay, don't chip in, but we know you won't expect anything in return either. You just go do your own thing.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a hypocrite, then we're going to come get our taxes. Then we'll come with the guns.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to give, but you'll be happy to take, well, then don't bitch about taxes.
Exactly. That is actually a really good point.
Like, if you're tough talking and you're a mountain man, go do you, man. Like, yeah. But if you're like, oh, I'm complaining about this pothole, but then like, oh, fuck the government, we don't need them. It's like, well, you're not out there fixing that pothole out of the goodness of your heart right now.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, if you're out there every day patching potholes and you're also complaining about the fact that there are potholes and you're paying for pothole repair, okay, that's fair.
Right.
But most people don't do that. Like, they are the example that you gave earlier. Like, yeah, like if you're that dude that moved to Alaska and built his own house and lived there for like 50 years, all on his own. There was a whole documentary about him.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just leave that guy alone.
I think the one freedom people forget is that we don't have the consent to say we don't want to be part of the government.
Oh, man.
Like, we don't get to make that choice.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
Wherever you're born, that's where you belong.
Which does kind of like make me question, like, is this akin to slavery?
I mean, like, on a real stretched out sense. Yeah. Like
you know, back in the day, well, in some places today, you're born into a certain socioeconomic system. You're one of the tiers of people, and you're expected to perform for the system. Like, oh yeah, play the game according to the rules. And it's not like Squid Game where you're going to get like 40 billion. Well, it's not $40 billion, but billions of dollars. If you win, you get nothing. Like, you play the game and you're going to be lucky to walk out with anything. Oh man.
Holy shit.
Okay, we've
this is real meta.
This is like super deep, dude. Oh man.
Wow.
I am like really curious to hear people's thoughts on this. Um like because I kind of wonder how many people have even thought this deep. And if you haven't, fine, that's okay. The system is built around oppressing people and keeping people down and keeping people small and not letting people be themselves.
And this shows the format of how to get around that, because we're always peeking around the corner and seeing what is related to what we're talking about.
Yes.
And we're like, hey, you know what this is kind of reminding me of is this facet of society. And it's like, oh, what if these are connected? You know, like what if this is all just like a web of control?
Yes, it is. And it takes the dichotomy of like our similar but different views to bring this to light.
It does, yeah. Like it's
entertain ideas.
It's two different ways of looking at things, like coming to the same kind of conclusions and like making the most headway.
Yeah, well,
toward the truth. Like
we both really want the same thing. Like, I don't know, the world to be a better place, people to be healthier and happier. Like, we both want that.
If we ever have like a last episode, it should be called The Truth.
it's like you get like, FBI, open up. That's the thing that happens.
You've discovered how the universe works. Fuck, shut them down.
Okay, so if I remember, I'm going to throw in that like clip of the FBI. Oh my god. Shit. We should actually do like a Waco episode too, to demonstrate how ridiculous the FBI is.
We did a whole live stream on that.
Did we?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't remember.
We had powers on for that one.
Oh yeah, I guess I should have some more beer.
That's what happens when you're in season 4, man. Like, we've got hundreds of topics.
Exactly. It's like there are so many episodes, I can't even remember what we've done. Like, did we actually cover that? And then couple in the minute microscopies, like,
well, we just did an episode on artificial intelligence, and I was like, that's the first time we've done that. And then I saw that we did one in like season 1 or something.
Oh man.
Like, oh, I guess we touched on that. I totally forgot.
We have done more episodes than probably anybody has done. Well, okay, maybe not. If you add in minute,
not the old timers.
Yeah, like Star Trek TNG, they might have more episodes.
No, we have more episodes than they do.
What?
Yeah, they had 178.
Holy shit, dude!
They were doing like 24 a year, right? Ooh. And we're doing like 50 some plus a year.
Yeah,
because sometimes we do a couple here and there in a week. And
okay, so did TNG have like a new song every episode?
Fuck no.
No.
Well, I mean, like if you count the background score, I guess kind of technically.
Yeah, probably.
I bet they recycled some of it though.
Oh, they did. Best theme ever. Like, oh man, if I'm ever gonna get in a fight with somebody, this is I'm gonna like bust out my phone and like
props to Strange New Worlds for like hanging on to that music when the Gorn episode happened. Like I was like, yeah.
I haven't seen that, and I've actually been wondering.
It's really good. It's really good.
That's what I've heard.
It's back to being episodic, and yeah, it's not like It's not overly fucking leaning on the past like Discovery was. And yeah, it's great.
Mm-hmm. Oh man. Well, and there's also the what is it? The one with Pike, right?
That's the one. Yeah.
Is it?
Strange New World.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking Lower Decks. Sorry,
Oh yeah.
had a few.
That's actually pretty good too, but it's
Here.
like tongue in cheek good.
Yeah. Well, it's animated, so I was gonna.
Yeah. I haven't checked out Prodigy, which is like the CGI animated one, I guess, that looks a lot from the trailers like a Star Wars ripoff, because they did a cartoon with like the exact same kind of alien robot looking thing. So, I haven't checked that one out yet.
I wish Prelude to Axanar had like become a thing. I was like so hopeful for that.
I don't know what that is.
It's an indie project that got like squished by Paramount, I think. Yeah. Well,
well, we just did an episode on patents, didn't we?
yes.
And I'm surprised we didn't talk about Mickey Mouse coming into public domain.
Oh shit. Oh man.
But I guess that's a whole episode because you have your Disney thing, and
man, we should totally do that.
yeah.
Well, hey, you the viewers, leave something in the comments. Like, tell us what we should talk about next.
Mm-hmm.
In
And
fact,
check out that groovy song on the
Oh, yeah.
airwaves coming through now on 35.3 KSM.